with the acknowledgement that in Ottawa, we meet on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people. Here in Hamilton.
You muted yourself, Chair.
There we go. We have the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and it's often said that we are also on the territories of the neutral. That's an incorrect term, as is Attawandaron, which is kind of, well, it's not, it's a descriptive term for the way they speak their language. The name of that nation was Chanantan. And so, having said that, the committee is meeting to consider the supplementary estimates A 2021-22 to ensure an orderly meeting. Participants, make sure that you have the language selected through the interpretation globe on the bottom, and you can change back and forth speaking. However, select one for the translation in your ear. With us today, virtually for the first hour, are the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Carolyn Bennett, and the Minister of Northern Affairs, Dan Vandal, accompanied by the following senior officials: Paula Isaac, Associate Deputy Minister, Serge Baudouin, Assistant Deputy Minister, Martin Rehier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Chantal Marin-Comont, Director General, Annie Boudreau, Chief of Finances, Results and Delivery Officer. Is that the whole list? That's quite a long group. I think it is. So, and we're awaiting Deputy Minister Quan Watson. With that, let me welcome everybody and open up the floor, Minister Bennett, for your opening remarks.
Hello, bonjour. Je m'adresse à vous.
I am speaking to you today from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I wish to honor the waters they paddled and their moccasins which walked these lands. I am joining you along with my colleague, the Minister of Northern Affairs, and we are supported by our Deputy Minister, Daniel Watson, and his team. While I am appearing today on my department's Supplementary Estimates A, it is also at a difficult time for Indigenous communities and all Canadians.
All deeply heartbroken at the discovery of the unmarked remains of children at the former Kamloops residential school. This has shocked and disturbed the nation. And for Indigenous people across the country, these findings are deeply painful and traumatizing. But for them, not as surprising as this was forecast during these have been the stories and the knowings for a very long time. For 6 years, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission heard these hard truths, along with many others, during their national and regional reconciliation gatherings. These revelations have reopened many wounds and renewed a necessary conversation on the role of residential schools, those responsible, and how, as a country, we can move forward together. We are working with the Kamloops Secwepemc First Nation and our partners, such as the BC First Nations Health Authority, to provide the resources and the supports needed as determined by the community. I've spoken with Cookie Casimir most recently on Monday night. Her leadership and strength have been exemplary. We've offered support for healing and mental health supports, security, whatever she needs to support her community now, as well as the support for research, archaeological expertise, and commemoration going forward. In memory of all of the children who went missing and in support of their grieving families and communities, we provided $38.8 million through Budget 2019 to implement TRC Calls to Action 72 to 76. To support implementing Calls to Action 72 and 73, we have funded the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation to develop and maintain the National residential school student death register and establish an online registry of residential school cemeteries. In keeping with the principles laid out in Call to Action 76, after the passage of 2019, we engaged with communities to ensure any program to deliver the funds to support Calls to Action 74 and 75 was designed in a way to meet their needs and flexible enough to support community-led approaches and to respect community protocols. Based on what we heard, we are currently providing funding on an urgent basis to support Indigenous-led, community-based, survivor-centric, and culturally sensitive investigations of these burial sites. We are actively reaching out to Indigenous communities to work with them on how they can access the $27 million of funding being delivered to support them in finding their lost children. Communities know what they need, and our government will be there to support their way forward. In discussing the supplementary estimates we know that the money is there to heal past wrongs, support self-determination, and advance reconciliation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. They reflect a net increase of $997 million, which includes the $136.4 million in new funding and $868.2 in reprofiled funding. The reprofiled funds in these estimates will preserve funding for the ongoing implementation of the federal Indian Day Schools Settlement Agreement and the 60 Scoop Settlement. As of May 31st, 2021, more than 113,000 claims received under the federal Indian Day Schools Settlement. Over 75,000 survivors have received payment for individual compensation. While COVID-19 has delayed the implementation of the 60 Scoop Settlement Agreement, approximately 15,000 interim payments of $21,000 have been paid, and these supplementary estimates will preserve the funding to complete the individual compensation, which should be determined later in this fiscal year. These supplementary estimates also include funding to support Inuit housing, Chilcotin community priorities through their pathway agreement, implementation of the Nunavik Inuit land claims agreement, and many other important measures to support reconciliation. We have provided you with a comprehensive deck on the supplementary estimates and I look forward to providing further details through your questions. Miigwech, Nakumik, Marci, thank you, merci beaucoup.
Thanks very much, Minister. And on now to Minister Vandell. Please go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tansi Boshu, good morning and hello. I'm addressing. First of all, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from my office here in St. Boniface, St. Vital, City of Winnipeg, homeland of the Métis Nation and Treaty 1 territory. Alors que ce comité se réunit, notre pays.
This committee is getting together at a time when our country is grieving the discovery of 215 children's remains from the former Kamloops residential school has seriously hurt the country. And this has renewed a very important question at the national level. Allow me to be very clear. Reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and the well-being of Indigenous people's lives has never left our minds. That is my motivation and my preoccupation as Minister and Member of Parliament. I am a proud member of the Métis Nation, and it's a great honor for me to live in St. Boniface, Vital, and to represent my citizens. Louis Riel, who was born in St. Boniface and who was buried in St. Boniface, never had this opportunity. Louis Riel was democratically elected the member of Provencher, not once, twice, but 3 times. And yet, he was never allowed to sit in the House of Commons.
Granted are some that my ancestors would never have believed possible. And I work every day with this knowledge, and it drives and motivates my work. As Minister of Northern Affairs, I strive to listen to Northerners, ensuring their needs and priorities to drive my department's work. A year and a half ago, when I was appointed minister, I stated that decisions for the North would no longer be made in Ottawa boardrooms, and my team and I remain committed to that vision. We work for the North and with the North. That's why the Arctic and Northern Policy Framework is so important to our combined work together. The investments my department is seeking through Supplementary Estimates A are driven by this approach, focusing on the responses to COVID-19 as well as housing and infrastructure needs. The pandemic has highlighted what people have known for far too long, that Indigenous peoples and Northern communities have been underserved. And further, we have recently been reminded of the consequences of colonialism for Indigenous peoples and communities. We know that Canada's north food prices can be significantly higher than in the rest of Canada. Additional factors such as geographic isolation make Northerners particularly at risk to food insecurity, vulnerabilities that have only been made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. In April 2020, our government provided an additional $25 million to Nutrition North Canada to increase subsidy rates on nutritious food and essential hygiene items. Our government also introduced the Harvester Support Grant, co-developed with Inuit partners to help with costs related to hunting and harvesting, creating greater access to traditional country foods. Building on this and to address the ongoing concerns, the estimates in front of you provide $20 million in funding to maintain Nutrition North Canada measures introduced in April 2020. These supplementary estimates also provide $50 million in 21-22 for the governments of Northwest Territories and Nunavut, $25 million each to respond to their short-term critical housing needs. I view these as down payments to the housing situation in the North. The need is clear, and we are committed to closing the unacceptable gap that exists in the North. These amounts are intended to address immediate and pressing housing needs this year. We recognize that more investment is required. And from Budget 21, Northerners will also benefit from the $2.5 billion in new funding through the National Housing Strategy across Canada delivered by CMHC, and the $4.3 billion in new funding in distinctions-based Indigenous community infrastructure, which can include housing. Mr. Chair, as I stated before, reconciliation is always in the forefront of my mind as minister. I'm working towards a renewed relationship between Canada and Indigenous peoples, including through the Inuit Crown Partnership that respects constitutionally guaranteed rights and that is based on collaboration and cooperation. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to meet with you virtually. Today, I welcome your questions. Thank you. Merci.
Thanks so much, Minister, and both ministers. And Mr. Clerk, I believe Mr. Quan Watson is here. Sir, could you recite the first soliloquy, Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1, just for a sound check?
I could, but you would probably prefer that I wouldn't. So perhaps this will suffice. I'm hoping, into the breach once again is maybe the closest that I could get to responding positively to your request.
And that's a thumbs up. Thanks so much. So we're going to go to our questions now, and we're tight for the hour ahead of us. And I don't have the first Conservative speaker. So who is?
That would be me, Mr.
Go ahead, Mr. Schmale. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good morning, ministers. Great to see you both again. Maybe I'll start with Minister Bennett if I could. Minister, talking about the $27 million that was released, I guess, last week. It was previously announced funding to uncover what are believed to be thousands of Indigenous children buried in unmarked graves at residential schools across the country. Minister, why did it take 2 years to release that money?
Thank you for the question. And I think that what we had been told obviously was that we needed to get money to the NCTR to be able to work on the registries, but our advice was that we needed to go to communities, to experts, to make sure that the design of the program would be respectful and would meet the needs of communities. And in that engagement, last year, we were able to determine that they wanted it. It had to be Indigenous-led, community-based, survivor-centric, as well as culturally sensitive. And they wanted the flexibility to know that whatever that community needed would be funded in a way that met the needs of that community. And so things like whether it's gatherings, commemoration, whether it's research, or whether it's archaeological expertise, that this will be a very flexible program that was launched last Wednesday, and we really want communities to know that we'll be there to support them in their way forward.
But what was the delay? The fact that it was announced 2 years ago and previously announced funding, and all of a sudden it was made ready? Like, was it just coincidence that it's just all of a sudden made, or what happened?
Well, what happens is that you need to design the program, then you need to go to Treasury Board, and all of that was taking place since I met with the NCTR and with former Commissioner Marie Wilson in November of last year. We then designed the program based on the very best advice we have, and then it was able to be released last week.
So, okay, that's, but you understand where I'm coming here. Like, it was previously announced 2 years ago, and it finally got finalized and released, ready to go. But it almost seemed like it took that tragedy, that discovery, in order for the government to finally release that cash. So I'll move on, because I do have a number of other questions here. As you know, our leader, Aaron O'Toole, wrote to the Prime Minister asking a number of things, 4 points specifically. The one I wanted to ask about is the plan to address the TRC calls to action 71 through 76 and develop a concrete action plan by July 1st. Is that something the government is able to commit to?
Well, Jamie, 71 is a provincial one that is dealing with the coroners. That is not under federal purview. 72 to 76, as I explained, we're well on our way. It is the money that has gone to the National Center on Truth and Reconciliation in terms of the being able to develop the death registries, as well as there's more money going forward to them as they do their important work, as well as the money that was in the this recent announcement to go to communities. And so when we look at the 72 to 76, we really do believe we have a plan to be able to honor what was in those calls to action.
So can you commit to that action plan, releasing it to the public, to us, that of July 1st of this year, you will have a concrete roadmap on how you're going to get there?
Absolutely, Jamie. We have a plan for every one of the calls to action that is federal responsibility or shared responsibility. And we're, as you know, we're well either completed or well underway with 80% of them. Obviously, what happened just now with C5, C8, as well as C15, we are making tremendous progress on the calls to action, and we really do believe that calls to action 72 to 76 are well underway.
So, Minister, prior to the announcement of the 27 million that previously announced funding 2 years ago, sorry to bounce back to that, how much of outside that 27 million, how much funding has already gone out to communities to assist investigating unmarked graves across Canada?
As we understand, as you know, the Tecumlip's community did receive $40,000 from Heritage Canada, actually, in the Pathways to Healing. So there have been many different avenues, but this money in the budget 2019 is dedicated exactly to Calls to Action 72 to 76.
So, Minister, as you know, the Kamloops First Nation is paying for security and commemorations and other costs associated with the discovery of those graves. They've asked for short-term funding, which I'm sure you know, from the government to assist them with that. Is that something the government is investigating? If yes, has money been provided? If no, is there a timeline on when they might see that?
We're over time, so quick answer, please.
Sure. Minister Miller and his department are providing whatever the Kamloops needs in terms of security, mental health supports, and we will work with the Kupki Casimir on anything around gatherings or the kind of commemoration that they are planning.
Thanks very much. Mr. Pelosi, 6 minutes.
My questions are for Minister Bennett, or perhaps Mr. Quan Watson can answer these questions. Former Senator Murray Sinclair, in a recent statement related to finding the bodies in Kamloops, suggested that the churches have documents that they haven't disclosed related to missing and dead children. Do we believe, and I've actually heard also the suggestion that perhaps even the Vatican has such documents. Do we believe that there are such documents out there, and what have we done in order to try to secure those documents?
Well, as the Prime Minister has stated, and he reached out to the Canadian Council of Bishops and spoke with them on Monday, I think that we've been very clear that we expect the church to release all relevant documents. I understand that the diocese in Vancouver is open to that. We are hearing from the bishops in the north their willingness. I do believe that we need these documents from the church. The Canadian government has handed over all relevant documents, and it is really time that in order to do the work of identifying these lost children, the records that the churches hold must be handed over, and we will continue to pursue that.
Do we have the legal power now to require the churches to release such documents? And if we don't have the legal power, I would suggest certainly in Parliament have the ability to give ourselves the legal power to require the churches to hand over those documents. Are there any such plans, or do you think the laws already exist?
Well, my understanding is that our legal options to compel documents are pretty limited, but I think maybe the officials could explain if there are any pathways that open to us.
And perhaps I could ask Monsieur Rière, who's followed this file closely for a long time, to jump in here.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. If I may, Mr. Chair, I would add to the answer that churches had obligation to disclose documents in the context of the litigation that led to the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement, and under that agreement. And the legal power that the government would have at this time to compel the Catholic Church to produce documents would be to file a request for direction with the supervising court to compel the production. If documents were located outside of Canada, of course, that becomes much more complicated in terms of jurisdiction. Thank you.
Sorry, so just to clarify, you say on the previous litigation, there was a requirement to disclose documents, and those can still be accessed now through that previous litigation? I'm just not sure what the response meant.
Thank you. The documents that were disclosed as part of the litigation were gathered, and under the settlement agreement, a lot of research was done both by the federal government and by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and over 5 million documents were gathered and transferred to the NCTR. So there is already a lot of historical information that is available. So this is the document collection I was referring to. If there are other documents that exist that were not disclosed, maybe the legal power that we would have would be to go through to the court through the processes under the settlement agreement to compel additional disclosure.
So you think the power already exists through the previous agreement to require the churches to disclose?
That is the power that we would have at this time under the settlement agreement, the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement document relating to Indian Residential School had to be disclosed, and if not all were disclosed, that is the recourse that we would have.
Okay, Minister, we have set aside $27 million for further investigations to see if there are, and certainly there will be other graveyards or bodies found. Can you tell us, it hasn't been that long since the bodies were discovered in Kamloops, but have other Indigenous groups so far come forward to ask for funding to look for further sites?
Yes, unfortunately, Marcus, that there in the Kamloops, that there had been that knowing for over 20 years, and they'd begun that work. I think that that we are already seeing requests coming from Saskatchewan, from Six Nations, that that this is unfortunately very prevalent. I think as we go across the country and see even the marked graves of the small crosses there in the cemeteries adjacent to where the schools were, it is heartbreaking. But as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission said, there are just thousands probably of unmarked graves and remains that yet to be discovered.
That brings us to time, and we go now to Madame Bérubé, 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and the Cree, among others, and I'm currently in my riding of Val d'Or. We are all affected, sadly, by the loss of these 215 children, whose remains were recently discovered, and it was very disconcerting. In memory of these children, we need to know the truth and help the communities, and most importantly, listen to them. My question is for Minister Bennett. Hello, ma'am. At Kitsik, the community still doesn't have running water and electricity, because in the eyes of the white community, they are squatters. And it's ridiculous because it is their own lands. Can you please tell me why things aren't moving forward for Kitsizikik? Thank you. Thank you for the excellent question. It is the lack of utilities and drinking water and other things. It is very important. It's a priority. It's an approach from Minister Miller and I and Minister Vandal. And it is an issue, a crucial one. And I hope that in the future, a specific response will be found for this community. And I hope, in fact, I promise I will find an answer for you. Thank you, Madam Minister. And you also know it's important that Kitsizikik is an invisible community in the eyes of the government often, and this is a direct consequence of the terrible living conditions they're in. No support And in order to settle this situation, it's very important that it be dealt with on a government level. I'd also like to thank you for your presence today before the committee. Last year, I don't know if you recall, but I had raised the issue of comprehensive land claims, and you said that you agreed with me on this subject. What has your department done to update this policy since March of 2020 when we spoke on it? If I could have an answer, please. Perhaps you could repeat the question, ma'am? This is about the comprehensive land claims. I had brought up the issue on the comprehensive land claims policy. Yes. This is absolutely critical. We are making progress with the claims throughout the communities, and it's possible for me to lay out I can give you a description and the progress made. We would really appreciate that. My next question is for Minister Vandal. Earlier, you spoke about Louis Riel. As a Quebecer, I can just reiterate the historical connection between the Métis and Quebecers. Now, there was an unfair execution of Louis Riel. Do you not think that it would be time for the federal government to finally present its apologies and exonerate Louis Riel? Yes, thank you for this excellent question. What I can say is that the elected Métis government or direct descendants of Louis Riel neither of them want exoneration for him. We respect the self-government and independence of Indigenous peoples. I know that it's a significant matter. There are important discussions that are happening within communities. I would say that it's up to the Métis community to give us direction on their perspective. I can't hear you. Pardon me. My question is for Ms. Bennett. We were talking about C-15, which is currently before the other chamber. I've got two questions on this. First, are you confident that the bill will get royal assent by the end of this parliamentary session? And will there be a commitment that C-15 be approved by the Governor General?
The committee and Madame Bérubé, I'm so sorry. The bells are ringing. I'll give Ms. Bennett just a half a minute to try to respond. And we will continue on until approximately 5 minutes before the actual vote. We're in around 27 minutes. There's a half-hour bell. So that will certainly give Ms. Mumalak, Ms. Kakak, the opportunity to ask her questions. But once again, Ms. Bennett, did you pick up Madame Bérubé's?
Oui, merci pour.
Yes, thank you for your question. I think Minister LeBlanc said last Saturday that the candidates include the possibility of a Governor General who is Indigenous. And we're waiting. And also, for your question about the comprehensive land claims, it's a subsidy for all First Nations for their commitments first, and then for revisions of our federal policies.
Mr. Clerk, do we need a motion with the bells are ringing? I just want to make sure we're proceeding.
If members are in agreement to proceed as you suggest, then that's absolutely acceptable.
One objecting, I don't see an objection. Ms. Kakak, please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, ministers, for being here and your speeches and so far answers. The Prime Minister has stated that your government has the tools and processes to force the Catholic Church to disclose remaining residential schools documents. Minister Bennett, the Prime Minister, said that he would only use these tools when it is necessary. Why don't you view this as necessary now when Indigenous children are found dead?
Thank you so much for the question. And I think that we are asking the Catholic Church to release the documents if there are any documents that have not, as Martin said, been already released to as part of the settlement agreement class action. So I think that we need to know what might be there and be able to proceed. This will be essential in being able to identify those lost children.
So I'm specifically asking why your government isn't viewing it as necessary, quote unquote. As an Indigenous person, Minister Bennett, it's really insulting that you are deciding what is necessary when I and Indigenous people across the nation are telling you that this is necessary. Do you believe that family member records are the family member's property? Are these documents not the churches, not the governments? These are ours, Indigenous peoples. Why are you, as a non-Indigenous person, deciding what is necessary in terms of our documentation?
I agree with you totally that this, as a physician, the records belong to the patient. That was hugely important. And I think that now, as some of the churches are voluntarily giving over the documents, if there's anything left that hadn't been previously, we are hoping they will do that. But I do believe that families and survivors expect everything to be there for the examination, to be able to do this extraordinarily important work of identifying the children.
Last week, Minister Bennett said the government's already earmarked $33 million in 2019 to implement the TRC's burial-related recommendations. But that $27 million has not yet been spent. Why wasn't this money spent since the 2019 budget?
Thank you for the question. And again, as some of the money has been earmarked to the National Center on Truth and Reconciliation for their ability to keep comprehensive records that on deaths and burials and cemeteries that families can access. The advice to us was that we must design a program that would meet the needs of Canadian of all of the possible communities, survivors, families, and that is the work that we did, and that has resulted in a very flexible program where communities will be able to apply for research, for gatherings, for commemoration, whatever the community needs. We now have a program that will be able to meet those needs and be able to help them unlock the healing and move forward.
Let's also be extremely clear that the finding of the remains of these children was not an initiative set out by the federal government. It was an initiative funded by the provincial government. How much longer would we have been waiting if that didn't happen? This didn't happen because the federal institution cares. This happened because a provincial government cares. And this was brought to light because of a provincial government, not because of the federal government. So why is this suddenly such an urgent matter to distribute this money? Why was this not a priority of your department? It took the BC government's funding to uncover the mass grave in Kamloops. Do you think it is the federal government's responsibility to fund these searches?
It most certainly is the federal government's responsibility to fund these searches, and that is why in budget 2019 we put that money aside for that purpose. I think in the case of Kamloops, they've been working on this for 20 years, and they were able to secure from the federal government money from Heritage Canada in the pathways for healing, and we will move forward with all other communities to be able to take responsibility for us to support communities in their way
So
forward.
now, not only does it sound like the federal institution didn't fund this, but they've been knowing about these kinds of initiatives for the last 20 years, it sounds like. So they know that these kinds of things have been needing to happen over the last 2 decades, just haven't put in the time, effort, or funds. Minister Bennett, you use phrases like working at the speed of Indigenous communities until there is a political opportunity like we have seen in the recent weeks. As an Indigenous person and a member of an Indigenous community that is constant use of the use phrase insulting, we're ready for action now, not when the next tragedy occurs, and you need to get to action. Thanks for the time, Chair.
Thanks very much. And so I think what we'll be able to do, given the time left prior to the vote, is take each of the parties on the next round, the 2 5 minutes, and Ms. Kakak and Madam Beyrouf Bay for 2.5. So Mr. Melillo, can you go ahead for 5 minutes, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the ministers for joining us. Today, I will direct my questions to Minister Vandell. Today, Minister, it's nice to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. You spoke about quite a few topics that I'll hope to get to them all in your remarks. But one of the big ones we've been talking a lot about, we've been seeing a lot about in recent reports, is about housing in the north. We know that there are housing shortages and housing issues with mold, with disrepair, with overcrowding across the territories, across northern Canada. In particular, Nunavut has been is especially has many challenges, and I do know that the government has allocated funding towards this. You spoke about that in your remarks, but the closing the gap is also something you say a lot, and the gap still remains quite large. Even with this funding, and it seems to me that a lot of the bureaucracies that have been created are not really getting the funds where they need to go to build these units in some cases, but as well, your government's sort of anti-development approach to many projects, I believe, has also made it so that there are no real incentives for developers to do their work as well and build new units. So I'm wondering if you can comment to that. Given that your government has spent so much money, as you like to talk about all the time, but the results for people across the north it's just not getting the job done right now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that very important question on housing in the north and in Nunavut. And you're absolutely right. The gap is huge, and the gap was made even larger when previous to 2015, 10 years of complete non-funding by the previous government only exacerbated an already bad situation.
You have been in government for 6 years.
So since being elected in 2015, through our $70 billion national housing strategy, our government has helped over 9,000 northern families on housing issues, including finding homes for thousands of them. We've signed 10-year housing agreements with all 3 territorial governments, which were non-existent before, which will invest close to $800 million over those 10 years. We've signed a $400 million housing agreement with Inuit right holders, which will invest housing in Inuit and Nunangat. And in the last budget,
Minister,
we're all allocating an extra $1.5 billion in rapid housing.
You know how many units have been built in the territory?
Since 2015, we've helped 9,000 northern families on issues concerning housing, including several thousand new units.
Okay, so that'd be 9,000 housing units were built?
Not 9,000. We've helped 9,000 families on important housing issues with at least several thousand homes in the north.
Okay. By your estimate, by the Department of Work, how many units would you say are still needed?
Hey, listen, the gap in northern housing is huge due to chronic underfunding by previous governments, and I'll be fair,
and your government as well,
including some of our previous Liberal governments, but mostly zero funding for the previous 10 years by the Harper government. But I will admit,
Minister, your government has been in power for 6 years.
I will admit
6
we
years.
need to do a better job in breaking down barriers, not only in Nunavut, but in Northwest Territories and in Yukon. In NWT, we've put together with the government of NWT a high-level Tiger team with senior deputy ministers from both governments to really take those barriers down. I think the funding is there. Why it's not flowing in as adequate a pace as it should needs to be addressed, and we're committed to working with all 3 territorial governments and Indigenous governments to do just that.
I'm happy that you mentioned that and that you acknowledge that, Minister, that the funding isn't flowing down where it needs to go. I think that that's very important because you do cite a lot of figures. As I mentioned, you're always talking about the funding that's going out the door, but we need these units.
Better is always possible.
That's the bottom line.
And that's my philosophy. We can always do better. Any government can do better.
And yours certainly has to. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Zan for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Minister Bennett, I have a number of questions that I'd like to ask you in a short amount of time. First of all, I want to say thank you for all your hard work. I know that it's not easy to change everything that has happened and overnight. Here in Nova Scotia, the Sibinigadig First Nations community has already now started to search with an archaeological team on the grounds of the former residential school there. And we are hoping that no bodies are found, but they do believe there were 16 children who had died, and they are going to be looking. They've already started last weekend to look. And also, they said that the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation has listed these names, and the search will be led by archaeologists of St. Mary's and the Mi'kmaq Cultural Heritage Curator, Roger Lewis, who is also a member of Sibiniganig First Nation. So these are the types of things that obviously need to be done in order to be able to find truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples across Canada. Now, given the possibility of police investigations of criminal behavior in some of these situations, what impact do you think police investigations will have on the current and future community-led investigations?
Well, thank you so much for the question. And I think that even the way you've asked the question is very, very important, because what was very clear in Call to Action 76 is that these processes must be community-led, and that the police investigation needs to actually take guidance from the community, and that it is important that the protocols have to be followed, and that even if the police have opened a file, it's very clear that any future or further actions need to be taken in consultation with the community. In that the protocols are very different coast to coast to coast, and it will be important to work with the knowledge keepers and the elders in each community to make sure that this is done in a good way and with respect and with the spirit of those children in mind.
I totally agree, and I think the sad part is that many of the stories are anecdotal, people remembering things, people remembering when somebody ran away and then was beaten or disappeared. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And I'm sure that you have been going through a lot yourself with all of this latest news, which sadly, Truth and Reconciliation has unearthed so much information, and there is just so much more to be addressed. And very disturbing for residential school survivors and their families being re-traumatized with all of this news. Minister, you've said that the $27 million in funding to support communities is flexible. So can you explain exactly what kinds of activities or initiatives would be eligible under this program?
We have a minute. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the question. And it is, I did want to just share with the committee this amazing meeting that we had last evening with the National Center on Truth and Reconciliation and Dr. Kona Williams, this inspiring, the only Indigenous forensic pathologist in Canada who really has a lot to share with communities and making sure that everything is done with respect to the communities. And I think that the funding is truly flexible such that it can be for research, engagement, knowledge gathering, memorialization, commemoration, bringing children home, in that some of the children might be at a distance and communities want to bring their children home. So the funding will be truly flexible such that communities are able to do what they know they need in order to unlock the healing.
Thanks so much, Minister. And
Thank
for 2.5 minutes to Madame Berube.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Minister Bennett. I'd like to know, would it be possible to have in writing the response following our discussion on Kitsisakik, given they don't have running water or electricity? You said earlier that you'd perhaps be able to see what you could do. Thank you very much. Perhaps the Deputy Minister, Daniel Kwan Watson.
Process.
Oui, nous serons très contents.
Yes, we would be delighted to send you that information in writing. We will perhaps share the work with the Department of Indigenous Services Canada, which is who is fully involved. But between the two of us, yes, we commit to send you those things in writing. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. I have another question. The time is flying by. Minister Benedict, you know that one gentleman has been negotiating with the federal government so that his reserve be recognized under the Indian Act, even though nobody likes that law and it's a perfect example of systemic racism. It's important to admit that knowing this could allow this move could allow this community to have better funding and public services. So in this case, the question has to do with the lands. Where are the negotiations at with this community concerning the creation of a reserve or arriving at an agreement that would allow them to get their land back? Thank you very much. It's very important for us as a government to move towards self-government. It's very important. And I think after this meeting, it's important to have a specific discussion on this community based on the facts. Thank you. Mr. Chair?
We're done. And Ms. Kakak, go ahead. 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if we should just pause for you to let us know what the next little bit's going to look like with the vote. I just know we're like about 5 minutes from there.
Well, we'll suspend. We'll wait until the vote's conducted, and then we'll consider, I think we'll be releasing our witnesses from this panel and then go to Minister Miller for the next panel following the vote.
So would I could do the 2.5 minutes and then what we'll do.
Well, you can ask your question now for the ministers here, and then we'll start all over again after the vote.
Okay, great. So I'll just start now. That's fine. Thank you, Chair. I have one question for Minister Van Dell. It's a yes or no. As soon as it's safe to travel and when you are fully vaccinated, do you commit to visiting the land guardians in Mintimatalik or Pond Inlet to see the conditions of Baffinland's Mary River mine? Yes or no, please?
Absolutely, yes. And I am fully vaccinated as of 8 days ago.
Great, that's fantastic to hear. Thank you, Minister. Back to Minister Bennett. Last week, the minister said that explicit details on her action plan in response to murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls inquiry are still to come. The action plan finally came out and had no tangible action, funding, or timelines, and now we are supposed to wait for an implementation plan. Indigenous women and girls are dying while we wait for another plan from you. I want to touch on and just confirm some of the things that have happened over the last while. So in 2019, June, the Liberal government said that they would give themselves a timeline of a year to develop a plan of action. So in the minds of Canadians at that time would mean an implementation plan is being developed with key stakeholders. I brought this up during last summer, and we had confirmed that even though there was the 12-month timeline, it took 5 months for stakeholders to even get funding to start the work. And then once we saw, of course, June 2020, there was an excuse of a COVID delay. So we weren't going to see any movement on already a delay that this government had given themselves. So here we are in June of 2021, and we're still have yet to see action and things come to fruition. Is that basically what's happened over the last year, 2 years or so, Minister Bennett?
Completely out of time, but I'll give you a shot at trying to answer that.
Thank you. Well, from the day we took office, we began the work to launch the national inquiry and then to be able to put in place things that would really matter, like the family liaison units. We have been working very hard. We always said we wouldn't wait for the national action plan to be able to make those investments. And as you know, in the fall economic update, there were money for shelters in this budget, 2.2 billion, which has informed the federal strategy. And that federal action plan or implementation plan will be ready this year, but already the money will be flowing. In terms of the national action plan, that is over 100 Indigenous women and Two-Spirited people leading that process. It has been the first ever of this magnitude, and we're very proud of the work that the Families and Survivors Circle have done with us, and they will lead this process with an excellent data strategy that'll make sure we're making progress, regular updates, and we are going to end this tragedy.
And we have to end this session in suspension. Madam Bérubé, point of order.
Oui, juste une question concernant.
Yes, a question about the vote. Are we coming back to the committee right after voting, or do we wait for the results of the vote and then we come back to the committee? I'd just like some clarity on that.
Problems, we can get them resolved. Thank you, ministers. We now suspend until after the vote. to the meeting of our committee, continuing its consideration of the supplementary estimates A 2021-22. And with us now for video conference in the second hour, Minister of Indigenous Services, Mark Miller, accompanied by his senior officials, Christiane Fox, Deputy Minister, Joanne Wilkinson, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Kelly Blanchette, Assistant Deputy Minister, Philip Thompson, Chief Finances, Results and Delivery Officer, and Dr. Tom Wong, Chief Medical Officer, Public Health, First Nations. Welcome, everyone. Mr. Miller, please go ahead with your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair. And before I begin, I understand you will not be renewing your term next round, as well as MP Kakak. So I do want to extend all my greetings to you and good luck in your future endeavors. And obviously, thank you for your service to the House of Commons and Canada and your people. Kwekwe unusakut tansi, hello, et bonjour. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge, as I'm in Ottawa, that I'm on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. First and foremost, I do want to say a few words for the communities and families, friends impacted by the tragic news of the children whose remains were recently found at the former Kamloops residential school located on the traditional territory of the Kamloops Secwepemc people. I want to like to thank the members for their continued advocacy for echoing Indigenous voices here in Parliament. While this discovery was shocked and disturbed the nation for Indigenous peoples across the countries, these findings are deeply painful and traumatizing, triggering, though not surprising, particularly to Indigenous peoples who have known this truth for far too long. Our thoughts remain with the families and communities impacted not only by the discovery, but by the residential school system. It is essential that we continue to respect the privacy space mourning period for those communities that are collecting their thoughts and putting together their protocols as to how to honor these children. Nous reconnaissons qu'il y aura un besoin continu.
We recognize that there will be an ongoing need for well-being services related to childhood and intergenerational trauma, and we will continue to work with our partners and communities to ensure adequate access to the appropriate services. Survivors and families affected by the Indigenous residential school system can use the National Residential School Helpline when needed. The Health Support Program, Answering Indian Residential School Questions, also offers access to seniors, traditional healers, and other cultural supports and emotional supports that are appropriate, or professional advice on mental health. Furthermore, all Indigenous people can access the helpline or by phone. And in the context of the pandemic, we offer our additional support for Indigenous communities so that they can adapt and use these mental health services. We have also recently announced $597.6 million over 3 years for a mental health strategy and well-being based on a distinctions-based program for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis nations, which includes ongoing support for former students of residential schools and their families. This will support existing programs, existing skills, and will help fill the gaps and meet current needs that are emerging and future ones for Indigenous communities.
2021-2022, and to provide you with an update on continuing efforts to confront the evolving COVID-19 pandemic. I will also answer any other question the committee chooses. For this year, the total authority will be $18.9 billion and reflects a net increase of $5.4 billion. This includes support for initiatives such as fundings for COVID-19 responses, including notably $760.7 million for the Indigenous Community Support Fund that has been so welcomed, $64 million for the continuation of public health responses in Indigenous communities, and $332.8 million for Indigenous communities affected by disruptions to their revenue due to COVID-19, which we announced and officialized and launched yesterday. The net increase for the supplementary estimates A also includes $1.2 billion for out-of-court settlements to advance Canada's overall commitment to reconciliation by paving the way to a more respectful and constructive relationship with Indigenous peoples. It also includes $1.1 billion for child and family services to support a proactive agreement on a non-compliance motion before the CHRT. This funding is crucial since the CHRT issued its first order for Canada to cease its discriminatory practices in 2016. We've been working with First Nations leaders and partners to implement the tribunal's orders, and we're in compliance. The $1.1 billion will go to communities that are engaging in activities that prevent the apprehension of kids and contribute to the transformation of the system that's been so broken. Let me be clear once again, we share the same goal. First Nations children historically harmed by the child welfare system will receive fair, just, and equitable compensation. The government is not questioning or challenging the notion that compensation should be awarded to First Nations children who are harmed by the historical discrimination and underfunding of the child welfare system. So the question is not whether we compensate, it is a question of doing so in a way that is fair, equitable, and inclusive of those directly impacted. To this end, we have already consented to certification of a consolidated class action filed by the federal court by the Assembly of First Nations and counsel to Xavier Mashum regarding the same children that were harmed by the system as contemplated by the CHRT. Furthermore, we are currently in mediation with the partners, but as set out in the mediation agreement, those discussions out of respect will remain confidential. We remain committed to providing First Nations children access to the necessary supports and services in partnership with Indigenous peoples. To that effect, it's important to note that 820,000 claims under Jordan's Principle were processed since 2016, which represents close to $2 billion in funding. Most notably in January 2020, the Act respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children, youth, and families came into force. It is key to this conversation in transforming the relationship, which responds to the calls to action and sets a new way forward. Indigenous governments and communities have always had the inherent right to decide over things that people like me take for granted, what is best for their children, their families, and their communities. The Act provides a path for them to fully exercise and lift up that jurisdiction. As a result of this work led by Indigenous communities, 2 Indigenous laws have now come into force under the federal law, the Wawasimung Independent Nations Law in Ontario and the Mio Pimatisoin Act of Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan. In each of these communities, children will have greater opportunity to grow up and thrive, immersed in their culture and surrounded by loved ones. Passons maintenant à une mise à jour.
Let's now speak about an update around COVID-19. Throughout the pandemic and still today, Indigenous Services Canada has been aware of the vulnerability, increased vulnerability of Indigenous communities faced with the virus. From the beginning, we have taken immediate and decisive actions that were necessary to protect the communities as best as we could. Our absolute priority is health, safety, and well-being of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. But without the dedication and determination of all leaders of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities, none of this would have been possible. I'd like to thank them for their ongoing work over the last year, especially encouraging their communities to get vaccinated. As for the progression and deployment of the vaccination, as of June 7th, 687 Indigenous communities have vaccinations underway. In total, 540,581 doses have been administered. First and second doses. This means that over 41% of eligible individuals in the communities, as well as people eligible living on the territories, have received 2 doses of the vaccine, which include people 12 years and older. This means for the people who've had a first dose, 80%, and if we count people 12 years and older, even more. As of the 9th of June, in the First Nations communities, we are aware of 761 active cases, which happily is a decrease from last year. This brings us to a little over 35,000 cases confirmed, 25,000 cases, and 348 deaths.
Bob, est-ce qu'il me reste du temps? Allez-y. Finalement, je voudrais parler d'une question essentielle pour les Premières Nations, et c'est l'eau potable. Nous voulons veiller à ce que toutes les Premières Nations aient accès à une eau potable. En date du 9 juin, des Premières Nations, avec l'appui de services aux Autochtones.
There was 105 in effect. In 2019, we've increased that support funding for operations and maintenance, which is a key demand of First Nations.
Sorry,
And with these
Chair,
increases,
can we just check interpretation? It just went really weird there for a
Yeah,
second.
I'm sorry,
have it
Minister.
on English and it went to French for me.
Yes, the same thing's happening here. Mr. Clerk, it seems to be jumping back and forth, the translation, whatever one selects.
Should be resolved now, Mr. Chair.
All right. Conclude briefly,
Yeah,
Mark.
okay,
Go ahead.
yeah. Thanks, Chair. In 2019 and 2020, we increased funding to support the operations and maintenance of wastewater systems. With these increases, by 2025-2026, over $400 million per year in permanent funding will be provided, and that's 4 times what folks currently are attributed. That'll be key and transformative into maintaining the lifespan of these key infrastructure assets in community and securing clean water for everyone. These added funds will have that tangible effect that I've mentioned, and will contribute to safe water, and safe and healthy communities. I want to thank you again all for this community, and now I'm quite happy to take any and all questions. Thank you. Et merci.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vidal, it's your first start for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today. You know, we always appreciate your time. Minister, you know, I'm all about talking about, we've had this conversation before about outcomes and results and some of those kinds of things. And I just got a couple quick questions up front that I will ask you to be brief in your answers so I can get to the substance of a couple other questions after. Your department has committed $43.7 million over 5 years to co-develop a legislative framework for First Nations policing that recognizes First Nations policing as an essential service. We recently completed a study on exactly that. And when we had officials from 4 different departments at committee, not a single one of those people could actually define what policing as an essential service was. Would that frustrate you that nobody from the department actually had a definition for what we're aiming for?
I think, MP Vidal, I think it's frustrating to Indigenous communities who have been, again, when I spoke about things we take for granted, certainly people look like me take policing for granted. And so there's an element in here that's important to highlight. My community, my department deals with sort of a companion aspect of policing as an essential service, as a relationship partner with public safety. The bulk of that will be led by Minister Bill Blair, firstly as he continues to fund the First Nations policing program, but then expand it and do the consultation work necessary to define and reflect the needs of communities, whether it's in treaty areas or anywhere across Canada where that service is needed for the health and safety of community, and foremost for women and children. And there's a key response to the MMIW calls for justice and the TRC report. So yes, absolutely, it's frustrating, but there is also an aspect of this which needs we need that input from communities to keep working with communities and putting forth a piece of legislation that will recognize that essential service. The part that I'm responsible for, to be clear,
Minister, I want to keep going. I'm going to run out of time. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to emphasize what I do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got so much I want to do here quickly. Yeah. You spoke about child and family services and the you know, I think you referenced a couple of First Nations that have made that or completed that journey or moving down that journey of taking over their responsibility. I've asked you this question before, and maybe that is a simple answer. Is there so far just 2 First Nations that have indicated their desire to do that? And just where are we at in that process? I think based on some of the events of the last few weeks here, it's so very important that we deal with some of the current issues as well, and having First Nation control of some of their child and family services is important. I'm just wondering how fast that is happening. If you could, you know, briefly respond, and then I want to get into one more detailed question if I could.
Yeah, and I'll be quite frank, it's slow. Certainly the pandemic, where people have focused on their health and safety of the communities, have resulted in slowdown. This is a revolutionary piece of legislation that lifts up the inherent rights of Indigenous peoples. We have dozens and dozens of communities across Canada that have expressed interest. There's about 500 million or more in the fall economic statement that was dedicated to working on capacity, to putting those laws forward and entrenching them. We want to make sure we have proper coordination agreements in place with provinces that hold a bulk of that responsibility. So there's a relationship aspect there with the provinces, including your home province, that we can't discount in all this. But there are many more, and there's some that have lifted up their own legislation and said we're not necessarily interested in C92, but this is how we're going to protect our children. So that has some validity as well. We're very cautious in those estimates, but I would say for the benefit of this committee that there are dozens and dozens that have some good work along the way. There's some difficult challenges ahead in and around capacity, so I won't hide that from you, but it is a long road, and it is part and parcel of everything that we've seen in the last week.
Thank you. And probably one final question. COVID-19 magnified the realities of some of the jurisdictional quagmires around Indigenous people in urban settings. You and I have had the conversation many times about friendship centers and the funding that it took some time to kind of make it through the community support funding process for the urban Indigenous folks. Friendship centers offer a variety of services that actually are as diverse as the communities they serve. And I know friendship centers across the country are looking for a kind of a longer term commitment so that they can plan for their futures. They can invest in infrastructure. They can, make sure they have commitments to programs that are ongoing and make good, efficient decisions. Is there anything going on with any of the budget work or the estimate work that would provide that long-term commitment for friendship centers that serve urban Indigenous people?
Yeah, certainly in budget 2021 MPVDAL, there is a large pot of funding for infrastructure that we are currently parsing out and working with community members to see how that would fold out based on need, based on shovel-ready projects. So there's a lot of light of hope at the end of the tunnel. Certainly the amounts that we've announced through the Indigenous Community Support Funds through COVID, of which there will be 4 or 5 waves. The latest one went out last week, has a rubric an envelope that is dedicated to the work that friendship centers are doing, serving Indigenous communities off reserve. Also room for tribal councils serving their people that live outside their communities. So that's an important element and aspect to it.
Is that beyond COVID-19 though, Minister? Is that longer term beyond ongoing funding beyond?
Yeah, and I guess what I was trying to say is there's been some immense work done under COVID that has been formative of the work that we will be doing going forward and highlighting that relationship. It is a different one than a nation-to-nation relationship, obviously with friendship centers that have a different form of governance and others that serve community members. But it's one that we want to work towards, knowing the number of people that live, of Indigenous folks that live outside their home communities. It is so key, and there is in budget 2021, although it was not specifically earmarked, but there will be some funding for urban Indigenous initiatives.
That's the time there. Thank you very much. Adam Van Koeverden, 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions for you, Minister. We'll see if I have time for my second one.
2020, the Act Respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Children, Youth, and Families came into effect in order to affirm the jurisdiction of Indigenous communities over child and family services. How will this Act support the well-being of Indigenous children and families, provide culturally relevant care to children, and could you please provide an update on the implementation of this Act?
So what we've seen throughout, and particularly it's become quite poignant and top of mind in the last week, is that Canada, provinces, has been administering a broken system for some time. And so we can talk about compensation, which is very important. When we talk about transformation, that's when we have to talk about the legislation that was passed just before the prior election, which is a shift in a culturally, in the spirit of self-determination, shifting a system that was been focused on one of prevention, not culturally appropriate, to one that is rather from intervention to prevention. And that is what, when it's embodied and ensconced in the language of self-determination, is an effort to lift up communities in how they protect their own. And again, something that we've taken for granted. It is long work. It requires an intense amount of consultation. There was about $500 million in the Fall Economic Statement dedicated to building capacity. That is something that will be deployed over 5 years. Additional investments will be required as communities bring home their children and pass their legislation to lift it up. I wouldn't say, and when I said to Gary that it was slow, there is an important principle that was embodied in when the law came into force, and that is the minimum standard of the child. So it is a signal to all of Canada and to courts that they can no longer sanction practices which removed disproportionately Indigenous children from their families based on issues such as poverty, and that is still the challenge for every single government in the future to keep combating poverty discrimination that is a legacy of our colonial past.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Ministre, pour ma deuxième.
Thank you very much. For my second question now, on June 2nd, the coroner spoke about Joyce Echaquan, and we learned new details of the poor treatment that Joyce Echaquan was subjected to. What plans are in place to fight against Indigenous racism in the health system? And how will this government make sure that Indigenous individuals, especially women, will have fair access to healthcare? I have to say, and I presume that this is the case for the rest of Canada who attended the coroner's session or the report on it. This is the lived experience of some, if not all, Indigenous peoples who apprehend the health system. They're often treated as second-class citizens. Now, during the coroner's inquest, we heard things that reflected their lived experience, especially in places where they're most vulnerable. I'm in contact with them almost daily, the husband of Joyce, and they're going through this with great courage, and they're still going through a very difficult time. But as I said earlier, this has been the experience of many Indigenous peoples in the healthcare system in Canada. And of course, the provinces keep this jurisdiction throughout Canada. I have the mandate to put in place distinctions-based legislation that would fight systemic racism in the system. And there are a number of things that have to happen at the same time. But of course, this would be a long-term reform. There have been jurisdictional conflicts in the past. We have announced in the budget about beyond more than $100 million in honor of Joyce Echaquan to fight racism in the healthcare system directly, and I'd like to highlight that. Thank you, Minister. Mr. Chair, I'd like to give the rest of my time over.
Will be much appreciated by Madame Bérubé and others. Sylvie, please go ahead. 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in the traditional territory of the Algonquin and the Cree, and I'm currently in my Val d'Or office. Thank you, Minister, and all witnesses. My question is for Mr. Miller. In the budget 2019, the government had announced $33.8 million over 3 years for the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And the Prime Minister and yourself have repeated that the government invested this money. Do you agree with me that a budgetary statement is without value if the amounts earmarked have not been authorized, yes or no? Where I agree with you is that I am not presenting any apologies for the deployment of these funds. As you know, this is a very sensitive subject to accompany Indigenous individuals in their grief. And this is very invasive and difficult for these individuals, and it can take time to get answers. Indigenous peoples want answers. Now, the Treasury Board made approvals, and the government's ready to help communities who want to do these searches. It's not easy because it's a very sensitive topic. There are protocols established, but I don't think that there is a community with protocols established for this type of atrocity. So we're going to give them space and time. But this should not be interpreted as an excuse to not deploy this money. And if there is a need for additional support and government expertise, we will be there for them. So, Minister, yesterday, in response to a journalist who asked you about the $27 million yesterday, you said the amount was announced in the 2019 budget. Now, very recently, the amount is available. I could do the research, but the money is definitely available. So can you please tell me if this amount is really part of the supplementary estimates that we're looking at today? Yes, and perhaps I can hand it over to one of my experts who are here. I don't have the answer that was asked to me by the journalist yet.
Philippe Thompson,
Mr. Thompson, Chief Finances, Results and Delivery Officer. There was reference to the $27 million. This amount is in the budget of the Crown and Indigenous Relations budget. It's not part of the supplementary estimates that we're studying today, that $27 million. And when we study public accounts of Canada for 2019-2020 and the budgetary estimates for the following 3 years, one notices that this money was not earmarked except for $3.2 million, which is in the supplementary estimates of 2020-2021. So can you explain to me what happened to the rest of the $33.8 million? If I'm not mistaken, of course, this falls under Minister Bennett's portfolio, but I can be corrected on the amount if necessary. This money was given to the Center for Truth and Reconciliation, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That is also my understanding. That funding is not part of the reference to our department, so I can't really give you any more information than that on that amount, unfortunately. And would you agree with me that in reality, the amount announced in the 2019 budget was never spent by the government and was not authorized through votes? Can you please explain that to me? Philippe? Yes, if the money had not been spent and the department could not spend that money, unfortunately, I am not able to speak to the amounts that were approved in the budget, which was not part of the department's reference levels for Indigenous services, so it's difficult for me to give you a more detailed answer than that. So it was blocked at the Treasury Board? Is that what you think? I can't say precisely because, as I said, if the money had been earmarked for the Department of Crown Relations, then it's their budget process that takes place, and we don't really have any role in that area. It would really be my colleagues from the Department of Indigenous Relations who could give you more details on the way that money was accessed, if it was accessed, and if it was spent or not. And Mr. Chair, in December, I received an answer from one of my questions around calls to action 81 to 82, and in the answer, the government told us that 0.5 employees were used for these calls to action. And let's remind everyone that this has to do with building commemorative monuments in Ottawa. So I'll ask the question I asked the other day. Do you not think that it's insufficient for carrying out this call to action? Once again, Ms. Bérubé, this mandate falls under the Heritage portfolio or the Minister for Indigenous Relations. Of course, we'd like to see it go forward given what's happened over the last week.
Madam Kakak, Ms. Kakak, please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. The budget allocates $25 million to Nunavut for housing construction. This would result in the construction of only 100 new homes across the massive territory. The government of Nunavut has said that the territory needs 3,000 new houses immediately. In about 30 seconds, can you give me the rationale for this low figure?
Yes, and thanks, MP Kakak. I want to just thank you for your advocacy for your people. I think we are currently under discussions with ITK for their needs and infrastructure. Housing will be a huge amount of that. That's part of the $6 billion that was announced in budget 2021. So that number that you quoted is only a small part of the discussion that's ongoing, and I believe there will be positive news in the near future, as is needed, absolutely.
As you and I saw on my housing tour, the reality of housing in the north is horrifying, unsafe, overcrowded, and moldy homes are the norm. I was surprised to see that the supplementary estimates added an extra $40 million for Inuit-specific housing. Can you tell me why this extra funding was included? Again, in about 30 seconds would be great.
I don't have an answer on that particular line item. Perhaps Philip does.
Great. Do you have any idea then how this money may be distributed or who it might be funneled through?
Yeah, as you know, we announced 400 million in housing that in partnership with the territory, and so those are monies that we have dedicated throughout our governmental budgets. But as to that particular line item, I don't have an answer for you.
NTI, or Nunavut Dungavik Incorporated, requested $500 million in the budget to fund housing development or Inuit housing in Nunavut. And yet, this government offered a measly $40 million for Inuit across Canada. NTI said that Inuit needs for housing is as great as Inuit Nunangat combined. The $500 million was a short-term emergency ask. It's a bare minimum ask. And even though you included more money for Inuit housing, it would still be less than a fifth of what was requested. That's like needing $5 and getting a quarter. That's an outrage. Why didn't this government at least budget the requested $500 million for housing in Nunavut?
And I want to highlight the work that NTI and ITK have worked towards putting a number in the ask. They've done amazing work in trying to quantify that housing need and infrastructure needs generally. We are currently working with them to work on allocations in the context of the $6 billion that was announced for infrastructure as part of Budget 2021. That is transformative, but we will continue those talks with them, and I hope to have some good news in the coming months.
That still doesn't really explain the rationale behind the less than a fifth of the funding that's needed just for, it's an emergency ask. It really doesn't capture the true nature of what is really needed in the territory. It's just it's a band-aid solution for what's needed right now even. And so even 500 million, you could say, is something that's even too low within Nunavut. And then this government decided to ballpark it even lower. So have you read the housing report that I put out from last year?
I've only the highlights. I've read the ITK's proposal on how they would like to deal with housing. I'm sure my team has, but I would just add the qualification that in terms of the numbers that you were citing, it is a very small part of the picture of what we will be announcing for the North. That said, I will acknowledge that in terms of the 10-year plan, the amounts in the budget are not sufficient to close that gap, and that is work that we'll have to be relentless in investing in over the future.
So I guess then you wouldn't be able to tell me what the title was or what communities were involved, or I guess anything that stood out particularly, because I traveled for three weeks and did a lot in that time. And so would you be able to recall anything like that from the report?
What I did watch was particularly your social media in and around your tour and some of what you highlighted. And certainly I've read the reports that the partners have put together as to the dire housing needs, and I will readily acknowledge them. And it is, from anything I've heard in terms of our COVID deployment and the contact that I've had, unfortunately have not had the chance to visit, and I would like to. All of that rings true.
So since you followed and may have looked at things briefly, you might remember some quotes like one unit had 14 people living in it with only 4 bedrooms. A child was so frequently sick due to mold that a child was placed in foster care. Minister, how would you tell me to respond if instead of Nauya or Koglokdok, my report had say Nuns Island or Griffintown, and if I was the minister in charge and was told you to keep waiting, how would you respond to that? What would you tell me to do? How would you take that?
And with great respect, MP Kekak, I know what you're asking me, but I would never try to place myself in your shoes. I think your words speak for themselves.
That's not what I'm asking, but thanks for avoiding the clear relation I'm trying to make. And I think that's my time, Chair. Thank you.
It is. Thanks very much, Ms. Kekak. And now we go to To complete the round of questioning, we'll have each of the parties speak, Mr. Viersen, Mr. Batiste, Sylvie, and Mumulak one more time, and that will take us to time. So Arnold Viersen, 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister Miller, I have been just looking over the TRC report once again, and it strikes me, driving around my own riding, that the amount of money spent on residential schools was not the problem. Some of these structures are the most imposing structures on our landscape in northern Canada. It's not a matter of the money; it's a matter of the outcomes. Your government continually touts the amount of money that they spend, and yet we see very much a lack of outcomes. So, are you still committed to implementing the TRC report recommendations?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with the 9 recommendations that you've achieved so far in the last 6 years?
I won't be satisfied till they're fully complete.
What has been the holdup?
And I would qualify your earlier question. There are a great number that are underway. Currently, the legislation under C91, C92, the immigration oath, currently the movement on the National Recognition Day, as well as UNDRIP, which your party opposed, are all key to transforming the relationship. I think one of them is trust. Certainly, you mentioned money, and you put forward a false dichotomy. Obviously, we want to see progress from the money, but we have to be relentless in our investments. This is about closing socioeconomic gaps, and the record shows that has moved, closing the financial gap in education, closing the financial gap in all the other investments in infrastructure, in health and investments. These are all things that have happened.
Action 71 through 76, Action 71 through 76 were actionable 5 years ago. Why are we not working on it till today?
These are all items that that we have started to work on, and clearly, when we talk about recognizing and doing something that is immensely sensitive, which is going over burial sites that are crime scenes and perhaps considered sacred at the same time. This is something where communities have to lead. I make, obviously.
So it's First Nations. The First Nations are the barrier.
That's absolutely not what I said. First Nations lead, they take the decisions, and the federal government will be there. This is an equivocation. This is how the relationship is built. We will, obviously, the last 2 weeks have focused people's minds on this, but this is something that Indigenous communities have known for decades. In the case of Kamloops, they've been working on it, as Minister Bennett said, for over 2 decades. And we'll continue with communities. There are some communities that have reached out, MP Viersen, and they want to accelerate their searches. There are other communities that said they are not ready, but they're at the same time worried about being left behind and not having financial commitment. So if ever you have the honor of your party coming into power, I hope that you will undertake today to fund those adequately, as well as you yourself complete the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action as they regard the federal government, because this is something that is of all stripes and parties need to dedicate to. Despite the great actions of some of your members that are sitting on this committee today, I haven't seen that as a group in your party.
I would remind you that Stephen Harper was the one that apologized for the government's actions in terms of and also kickstarted the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
And then cut funding the next day.
Over the boil water advisories continue to be a challenge for the federal government. Your government promised that they would be dealt with a year ago. We are seeing more communities come on to boil water advisories again. On what day will we be out of the bush on that?
Well, I'd encourage you to look at the revamped website, which was, we had some assistance with a great Indigenous organization, so that every Canadian could see what the progress of those are. Let's recall that in 2015, there were 105 long-term water advisories in effect. We've lifted 107. This is an immense amount of progress. There remains work to be done. A lot of the communities, despite having lost the construction year due to COVID, have pushed through. We've announced additional funding. A lot of communities have said to us, when we put on a date, where will you be after that date? Because of that trust that I mentioned earlier that is so thin vis-a-vis the federal government. It's why in November we announced additional operations and maintenance money and acceleration funds for those communities where costs have gone up, as well as looking beyond what lifting a long-term water advisory, which I will remind the committee, is done by the nation themselves. And while it may seem easy to lift an advisory, the community sometimes will hesitate legitimately. If you've been on it for 25 years, you can perhaps think you can legitimately think you're going to take your time before taking that decision, because it's about the health of the community. So these things do take time, but the commitment to communities is that we will be there for them.
How many of the current 28 drinking water advisories that are short-term do you expect to turn into long-term?
I don't know if I get you an answer today. I expect none of them to turn to long-term, but it's a community by community analysis. And one of the, you hit the nail on the head on that one, because we've lifted 100 or 100 plus. I mean, it is in the 182 short-term water advisories that we've made the investments sufficient so that they don't turn to long-term. That means safety of water in communities. But we need to take a look at water safety from a greater perspective simply than building the building, lifting the long-term water advisory, and walking away from this. This is about partnership and making sure that asset has a long-term lifespan that is at the height of its technology and worth to the community. That means training people at the grassroots in the spirit of self-determination, with the funds of the federal government to support it, so that they are what they are, which is the pride of their community and getting water to their people.
That's our time. Thanks very much. And Jaime Batiste, 5 minutes.
Thank you for joining us, Minister, and sitting here listening to the questions. I can't help but reflect. I've been in First Nation advocacy and leadership for 20 years, and I remembered a time where all of the issues related to Indigenous people were under one ministry, and now we have two, and you could add Minister Vandal as a third. And I couldn't imagine a time, you know, as we progress, where the fact that we have two ministers is to me a great thing and a good thing moving forward in terms of making sure that we have a lot of different people looking at the important issues of Indigenous people in Canada. And I also want to thank you for your speech in the House during the debate on how we move forward past what the findings of the Indian residential school in Kamloops with the 215 children's bodies. And I thought it was very powerful when you spoke the names, and I did some smudging in my house when you were talking about those names, and I really thought that was powerful. And you know, all across the country, we have communities grieving. We have communities triggered by the findings, and you know, in my community, we have a crisis center, Eskasoni Crisis Center, and they've been having a sacred fire outside and helping survivors who needed to talk and helping people. And you know, it really shows the importance and why we need to continue to fund mental health. And I just want to get a sense from you. Can you speak to the need and some of the supports that we're offering for mental health in First Nations communities across Canada?
Yeah, and thanks for that comment, MP Batiste. Those names were in the TRC report, but I thought, given the context, they should be read into the record of the House of Commons so that they will always be remembered. And I think there are more names to come, and that's, I think, what's gripped the whole entire country, including your community, and really triggered a number of people. Some of the most poignant testimony I've heard is those people who are not prepared to speak about these things. They haven't cried since they were 15. It's a recurring theme that I've heard. And when communities reach out and say they are not ready for this, but will you be there when we are? The answer is yes. And those that are and want to accelerate things, we will be there for them. What we have engaged completely, although my team that's here today is reaching out to communities to get a sense of what mental health needs are. They're the mental health needs I highlighted in my introduction, but you know, obviously a phone line, as important as it is not sufficient. And this is magnified as well by what we've seen through COVID, which is an increased stress on Indigenous communities' mental health. One of the budget items that was announced in budget 2021 was over $500 million for mental health supports. We don't do very well as a government or as a country in talking about mental health. Some of us that are probably best to speak about it don't, and those that are not so good do. And I'm the latter, but that is my job. And I think it is important to recognize that everyone in the country is hurting, and this, even far after some of the news stories will die down, people will remain hurting and triggered, as well as the effects of intergenerational trauma. So for the immediacy of the communities in question, we've deployed additional mental health supports, perimeter security, as you can imagine, but also working with FNHA, as you know, is first in class in BC and doing some great work with health resources in communities. The mental health support is yet to be fully understood and engaged in as it relates to the particular events that have happened in the last 2 weeks. But we're getting a sense of that, and it is one that is very important, and again magnified by COVID.
Minister, I don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to be brief with this question. You know, the Eskasoni Crisis Center has, in my community, has been looking for funding, and I'm not asking for funding, but do you feel the best approaches towards mental health in communities are the ones that are community-based, culturally relevant, and ones that are promoting the language in the various First Nations across Canada? And just in 30 seconds, thank you.
Absolutely, and I think that we've seen that has been a learning lesson with proof points. I think often that's been said to us and advocated, and is self-evident for Indigenous communities, less self-evident for federal government bodies. What we've seen through COVID is proof points where we see on-the-land learning, on-the-land isolation for physical health and mental health, and it's proven tangible results. So I think there's something to learn from this COVID epidemic as to how we can support local knowledge about protecting their own people, particularly as it relates to mental health. Obviously, that is no excuse for the federal government stepping back when there is a need, but it is a further reminder that we need to do so in partnership and not with Ottawa top-down approaches.
Thanks very much. Madam Berube, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Miller, recently you revealed a map on your department's website that identifies the Indigenous communities that don't have access to drinking water, and yet there's an Indigenous community that's not on that map and that doesn't have running water either. It's Kitsisakik, which is in my riding. So why is Kitsisakik invisible? Ms. Berube, you're talking about Kitsisakik. Negotiations are underway for moving the community, and that's discussions with the province. That's where things are at with this community. There's discussions about moving the community, so we'll be there for them. In Quebec, there is no boil water advisory, and that's because of very hard work that's been done over the years, especially for needs to especially for identifying communities who are under the federal jurisdiction. Would it be possible to give us a written answer about those negotiations, Mr. Miller? Yes. Earlier, you were talking about the revealing of the 250 children's remains. We know that it's possible that there are other discoveries that will happen in other provinces across the country. Do you have an idea of what you can do to help communities who are grieving and who have mental health problems, as you described earlier? Yes, absolutely. And this is just the point, this is just the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately. The report from the Commission on Truth and Reconciliation said it. There could be 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 people or even more. As Senator Sinclair said recently, we'll be there for the communities, as I said in English. There are some communities who aren't ready. Some elders haven't even cried since they were teenagers. There are communities who do want to speed things up, and for those communities, we'll be there for them, whether it's to support them financially, but also governmental expertise. I must take into account the role of the Quebec government, Ms. Lafrenière. We have a very good relationship with her in supporting communities, but we won't do anything without the community's consent. That being said, this is no excuse to take our time. We will be there, all while respecting the community's consent.
And Ms. Kakak, you have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. The supplementary budget estimates the supplementary budget estimates include 1.2 billion in funding for out-of-court settlements for Indigenous legal cases. The legal system has failed Indigenous peoples countless times. Where do you expect that money to be used?
Thanks, MP Kakak, and I will acknowledge that the legal system in Canada has failed Indigenous peoples. I think it's one of the present challenges we face as a government to continue doing so, where we are in disagreement in a respectful way, and obviously out of court is the preferred way to do so. I'd ask my team to specify those numbers because I'm aware of many cases, and if they could just break down quickly what those numbers comprise.
I think as well,
we can give you a written response too.
Out of court is the way that the federal institution has forced this to go. Residential school survivors should be compensated, and they shouldn't have to sue the government to settle out of court to get their money. Why is the government willing to spend more than $1 billion in court settlements, but not ensuring Indigenous peoples have access to basic human rights like housing?
Well, this touches on a question that I perhaps couldn't answer in the time remaining, but closing those socioeconomic gaps, talking about those issues that that have driven the inequities and violations of human rights is key. We don't want to get into a court process, but again, people that have suffered harm need to be compensated. Transforming the system is a part of that, and as you note, by implication, no single court case can transform the system when it comes to child and family care, as C92 can and aspires to. As well as all the transformative pieces of legislation around language as an inherent right, and that form of reparations that we need to do to transform Canada into what people believe it to be, but frankly, with the news in the last 2 weeks, is not.
It's also really difficult to hear the excuse of Indigenous communities not being ready. Indigenous communities have been ready for basic human rights for decades, have been ready for the right to self-determination and equality for decades. So I'd like you to start talking the talk and start walking the walk instead of just talking the talk, and go to communities this summer before your government forces an election. Minister Miller, I invite you to go up to communities like Teloriok and Sanikiloaq to see the conditions of the people that live there. Inuit have always said they want ministers to come up and experience day-to-day living. So like I said, walk with communities instead of just talking about the importance of them. Matna.
Thanks, Ms. Kakak. And that brings us to the end of the minister's role today. Mr. Miller, thanks so much for staying with us for as long as we were able to, and very interesting conversation. Thank you, committee. Now, committee, in view of the discussion we had, I didn't hear any challenges with regard to the SUPs specifically. So are we unanimous in consenting to call the vote as a group and adopt the SUPs on division? Anyone opposed to that? Don't see any opposition, so we'll call the unanimous consent for the SUPs as presented. And so, having adopted—
Sorry, Chair, just a clarification. Did we pass it unanimously or pass it on division?
Well, we can do whatever you want. We can do it on division if you'd like.
Yeah, I think we usually do it on division.
Okay, we'll do that on division. I thought we had unanimity, but we have it on division. So, so all in favor? Hands? Any opposed? Opposed, Madam Bérubé? Okay, thumbs up. Okay.
Ooh.
Passes.
4.
And so, having adopted the supplementary estimates, shall I report the supplementary estimates A 2021-22 to the House? On division, all in favor? I see hands all around. Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody. That passes. Thank you, everyone. We meet again next on Tuesday with witnesses for our trafficking study. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved, Chair.
Thanks, Ms. Dan. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you for a very interesting committee meeting today.
Thank you to the ministers.